Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. And yes, we're pulling double duty today. I want to thank Al Nash for being a new channel member. Also, we have Professor E. Michael Jones on the platform again. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, Rashid. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. I wanna ask you, what is actually going on in the minds of the people who run Washington D.C. to start this aggressive war against Iran, which is against America's national interests?
Okay, I've been thinking about this, and we've got that Israeli influence as a Christian Zionist, but I think that if you're talking about Washington, there's something deeper than that, and that's the budget. So we have a $38 trillion deficit. That's a lot of money, a lot of money. And so the question is, where are we going to get that kind of money? Where do you go for trillions? I know where you can go maybe for millions, but where do you go for trillions? And so I was starting to think, analyze Trump's latest moves in light of that number. If you go to Venezuela and you add up the total oil reserves they have and multiply it by $80 a barrel, you come up with a certain couple trillion. You add that to Iran, and suddenly you do the same thing there, and suddenly we're talking real money. What you come up with is $42 trillion, which is more than the deficit. And what I'm saying is now, after 1971, oil became gold. This is when Nixon took us off the gold standard and put us basically on the oil standard. So that's what's backing the currency of the United States of America. It's oil. And suddenly, if you could show the world that we have more control over more oil than we have debt, then the people in the world will have confidence in the dollar as the world's reserve currency, and we'll be smooth sailing. Everything will taken care of. Now, there's one little catch here. You have to conquer Iran to do that. And I don't see that happening. So as we're speaking right now, the Straits of Hormuz are closed. Now, this is a simple binary operation. Either they're open or they're closed. If the straits are open, America won the war. If they're closed, Iran won the war. It's that simple, and they're closed. And the last thing we saw was Iran fired 4 drones or missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln. So they said, oh, they missed. Well, maybe they were supposed to miss. Maybe that was part of the plan. But anyway, the Abraham Lincoln turned around and headed off in the opposite direction and is now heading toward Diego Garcia in the middle of the Indian Ocean. So that's what's supposed to open the straits. We spent $14 billion on that aircraft carrier. The American empire is based on keeping the sea lanes open. This is what we inherited from the British Empire. Britannia rules the waves. If you can keep the sea lanes open, or you can blockade anyone who wants to close the sea lanes, you can rule the world. Well, now we're entering a different era. So I've told you before about the Third Republic. Have I told you that already?
Yes.
Okay, we're now at the end of the Third Republic, American Third Republic. Began in 1945, after the end of World War II. There were certain things that came into being. The United Nations is the crucial institution of the Third Republic. That means a universal law, okay? The Holocaust is the founding myth of the Third Republic. That led to the creation of the State of Israel. Now we're at the end of that. 1945, 2025, we're at the end. We're sailing into uncharted waters, okay? And we are saddled with obsolete World War II technology, specifically the aircraft carrier and the tank. These are both World War II obsolete technologies, and no one knows where we're going. So at this point, the New York Times interviews Donald Trump. So do you believe in international law? No, he says. Well, what do you believe in? My mind. Where have I heard that before? That's the hidden grammar of America. It's Satan. And I'm talking specifically about John Milton's poem, Paradise Lost. Everyone at the time of the Declaration of Independence was reading that poem, either directly, as John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were, or indirectly because everyone was reading Tom Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense. And he quotes Satan repeatedly throughout that. The justification for the war, no one's going to tell me what to do, non serviam. And then he says, the mind is its own place. And it's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. So that's where we are right now. It's going to be an existential. And so who understood that intuitively? The Ayatollah Khomeini said America was the great Satan.
So what do you think is actually going on right now? Because they put a blackout over any destruction that Iran is causing to Israel and U.S. bases, even though news is still coming out. But yet they want to say that they've degraded Iran's missile potential by 80%. That America is about to guarantee ships through the Strait of Hormuz and use the Navy to open up the strait. What is your thought? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we have a stalemate. And it's like World War I. There was a stalemate because both sides had machine guns. That was the state-of-the-art offensive weapon. The tank had not been invented yet. The tank was invented to deal with the machine gun. So now we have two sides which are really good on offense and very bad on defense. So the Iranians, the Americans are dropping bombs on Tehran. Apparently, the Iranians can't stop these jets from coming in. But on the other side, the Iranians are raining down missiles on Tel Aviv. They're destroying Tel Aviv. Apparently, the Israelis can't stop them. And also, they have destroyed all of the military bases in the Persian Gulf. Bahrain, big where they refuel the fleet. Can't use it anymore. The radar is gone. So this means a lot of people are going to get killed in what is probably going to be a stalemate. That's what happened in World War I. Something similar happened with the fleet in World War I. The British Navy, Britannia ruled the waves. Okay, they had the biggest battleship in the world, could fire a shell 26 miles. The Germans could only had a ship that could fire a shell 13 miles. So they could destroy that ship. They couldn't even get close. Well, the British decided they're going to go through the Dardanelles, one of the narrowest bodies of water, to get into the Black Sea. And suddenly we're not talking about 26 miles. We're talking about 1,000 yards maybe. And they stopped those ships. The German artillery up on those cliffs stopped those ships. They could not get through. Similar situation right now. I'm saying that aircraft carrier will not get through. The drones, the technology will stop it. And I think the tacit admission that it's not going to get through is that it turned around and it's heading toward Diego Garcia in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Thank you for the $2 super chat. M. Sparks, thank you so much. When we talk about defense, I've talked to Scott Ritter and I've talked to a few other people, and they said that Iran's air defense systems are working. Someone told me that I forget. I don't want to attribute it to the wrong person, but someone told me that Iran has shot down at least 5 U.S. warplanes and multiple drones. It's just that the United States, like Iran, is sending them in waves. Iran Air Force is still working, even though most of their planes are antiquated. How can America fight to a stalemate when she has to travel back to Diego Garcia or to India to refuel and resupply? Because when she shoots her load, she has no place to go because the bases that she had in the Middle East are no longer viable or tenable for her to reload, rearm, and then go back into the battle.
So you're saying it won't be a stalemate. You're saying the United States will lose. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes.
Could be. What does it mean to lose? I'm giving you a specific parameter about win-lose. It's going to be the Straits of Hormuz. If they stay closed, America has lost the war, and that is the end of the American empire because it cannot guarantee the safety of the sea lanes. The American empire is based on opening sea lanes. If they can't open the Straits of Hormuz, that's the end of the American empire. They lost.
Yeah. Yeah, and and I'm pretty much saying what you're saying on that. But Trump had this to say, and I know this is bravado, but I know you want to address this when you hear it. Trump demands unconditional surrender from Iran. And then he says that he will pick the next leader for Iran.
This man is totally delusional at this point. Okay, where did that term, where have you heard that term before? It was the term emerged during World War II. Okay, Hitler made repeated attempts to negotiate a settlement all throughout World War II. Churchill would not talk to him. Churchill would not talk to him, and that's where the term unconditional surrender emerged. The military men, the American military men, were trying to tell Roosevelt and Churchill, this is a mistake. You should not ask for unconditional surrender. People are going to die unnecessarily because you're demanding unconditional surrender. This is not a good idea. And people died, and eventually America prevailed. And so he's trying to recycle that faded glory from the beginning of the Third Republic, when we're at the end of the Third Republic, and it's not attainable anymore. It's not attainable. You cannot, the Iranians will not capitulate. I say that because I know a lot of Iranians. I've been there a number of times. I've been there over a 10-year period. I think I was there once a year talking to these people. They will not surrender. The proof of that was the way they fought with Iraq for 8 years. A huge number, 300,000 casualties, and they would not surrender.
So, do you think that this is all bluster for the camera from Trump and his administration, and they have to know this behind closed doors, or are they just totally inept?
They're delusional. Now, what is the source of this delusion? It's bad theology. Bad theology. I'm talking about Christian Zionism. Apparently, Hegseth has told his commanders to announce that we are bringing Jesus Christ back to this earth because we are going to create Armageddon. Where did these people learn their theology? By watching Fox News? Where did Hegseth get his degree in theology? And this is the craziness that's driving this, giving this end times scenario and giving some sense that there is a kind of religious will that God is somehow behind them in their supporting their crazy theology. We should not be ruled by people like this. Where is the separation of church and state when we need it? This is delusional.
With those delusional leaders in power, and they're running the country into the ground, because to continue this operation means you have to continue to borrow money into existence to continue to fund the war machine. How is that even possible, and how long can that go?
It's a gamble. I think that everyone knows that something is ending, and so we're going to go for broke. I think Israel knows that nothing lasts more than 80 years. They're afraid the curse of 80 years is going to happen in 2 years, that Israel is going to go out of existence because no Jewish kingdom has ever lasted longer than 80 years. The United States intuitively understands that the empire is at stake, and this breeds desperation, and desperation breeds reckless behavior. This is reckless behavior. Reckless. There were people who were telling him, look, when you tell Trump something he doesn't want to hear, he fires you. That's his pattern. You tell him what he wants to hear if you want to have your job. If you don't tell him, and so the military chiefs of staff were saying, well, we can't guarantee this. Fire that guy. Bring in a general who will agree with me. And so this is how these catastrophes happen. Okay. What's your plan? Suppose the Iranians don't agree to unconditional surrender. What's your plan? What's your plan then? You are out of THAAD and Patriot missiles now. Within next week, you won't have any more. The Iranian missiles are coming through to Tel Aviv, even with them there, and you won't have any. So there will be no block on Iran's ability to destroy Israel, destroy that country. What's your plan? What's your plan? Are you going to manufacture? They can't manufacture these things. These big missiles cost millions of dollars. They can produce, I don't know, 10 a year or something like that. They burned through enormous numbers of them when they were in Ukraine. Now they're thinking of going to the Koreans. Oh, by the way, we let you that. No, we want it back now. That's not going to make the Koreans feel good. Well, wait a minute, you just took our protection away. For what? The same thing is happening in the Gulf. You guys, we need to protect it. Well, wait a minute. I thought you were protecting us. It's creating chaos, lack of confidence. Lack of confidence is the most important issue right now because that is what backs the U.S. dollar. The world has to have confidence in the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, no matter what happens. And everyone's losing confidence in America.
And can't you see that America is now caught in a catch-22 where she's going for broke because of desperation to try to salvage what's left of the world reserve currency, but at the same time, this is alienating people who would buy her bonds to keep her afloat. So she's caught in this catch-22. And what do you think they're thinking now that they are in that catch-22? That hey, we either have to go for broke or we lose out. But if we go for broke, we're going to lose out because we're going to alienate more people.
No, I think that they feel if we destroy that mosque and we rebuild the temple, Jesus Christ will come back and he will rescue us. I think this is in the back of the Christian Zionist mind. I think it's in the back of the Israeli mind as well. It's a religious fantasy. It is not reality. You got bad theology. You don't understand the Bible at all. It's a total heretical understanding of the Bible. It was created by a con man by the name of Schofield, who got the backing of big Jews like Louis Untermeyer to get Oxford University Press to print the Bible with the Schofield notes. That's the whole thing. It's an illusion. An illusion. It's, and God, in his mercy, will always try to deliver you from your illusions. Now, there's an easy way and there's a hard way. And for the fact, these people always choose the hard way. Benjamin Franklin said, experience keeps an expensive school, but fools will learn in no other. Well, they're going to learn in the expensive school. They could have gone to the cheap school, but they're determined to learn in the expensive school.
So do you think the empire can keep this up? She's stretched. She's in Venezuela. She's trying to take over Honduras, Ecuador. She is in North Africa. She just deployed troops to Nigeria. She is stoking the flames of fire in Ukraine and in the Baltics and in the Caucasus. And she's talking about a build-up to face China in the next year or so, all while she is battling Iran and the axis of resistance in West Asia. How can a bankrupt empire that weapons are no longer generations ahead of her adversaries, how can she continue this on when we see that her military is stretched thin and we see that her dollar is dying, we see that her economy is collapsing, we see that her weapons are not what they're billed to be, and we see that she's running low on armaments? How can this be maintained?
By will, pure will. We will. So what did Emerson? He was a Satanist too, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Nothing matters but the integrity of your own mind. Here we're back to the mind again. The mind is the source of all power. We can project this power onto the world because we have the determination of the mindset to do it. I think it's a crazy religious motivation. It does not stand up to any type of test of reality. As I said, I'm not a gambler, but I know gamblers, and there's something called doubling down. You know what doubling down is? It means you're going to lose everything, okay? Especially if you're in a casino, and this is a rigged casino, okay? So when you're desperate, double down, and you lost again. Well, double down again. Well, at a certain point, you run out of money, except that now we're not running out of money, we're running out of missiles. You're going to double down? It reminds me, I don't know whether you've seen this movie, the German movie. It was called Untergang in German. It's called Downfall, about Hitler's last days in the bunker. And there's this famous, he keeps going, it's all over the internet, but basically Hitler's saying, well, we'll move Starmer. Wo ist Starmer? Wir müssen ihn dahin bringen. And they're looking at him and saying, he's dead. He was annihilated. And he's getting mad. Well, get someone. No, this is where you're reaching the end of your power. You're reaching out. You thought it was going to go on forever. You thought all of these illusions would last forever. That's the whole myth of the American empire, and nothing lasts forever. Nothing.
And do you think that's why they can't come to grips with what is actually going on? Because they thought that they were the exception to the rule, and that they thought that they could beat history, they could beat math, they could beat science, they could beat time and extend the empire. Right. And go ahead.
We're a city on a hill. God is on our side. That's what the Puritans were delusional. They're completely delusional people, and they had to learn the hard way. So if you go back to John Milton, he came that close to being hanged for being a revolutionary in England because the revolution failed. He was a total believer in the revolution. They murdered the king, did a regicide, a horrible crime, okay? And then it fails. That's the mindset that he had when he started writing Paradise Lost. Why did this fail? We had so much hope in the future. We were going to be, and then it failed. And now what are we going to do? And so he's trying to think this thing through. Like we'll go to the ultimate rebellion. We'll rebel against God. Well, that's what it is. You think that your mind is superior to everything, that your will is superior to everything. And you've had so many successes in the past. Look what we did in Venezuela. We got away with like that. We just took that guy out, and this is going to be easy. And so they try to start this rebellion. They had the color revolution that began, the CIA playbook began in Tehran in 1953. When they used it successfully to overthrow Mossadegh and put the Shah in. So if we did it once and it worked in Guatemala and it worked here and it worked here, so why is it not going to work again? And so they're going to try, and they tried it. They tried it in Tehran. They had there was demonstrations on the street. The Mossad agents infiltrate the demonstrations, start shooting people. And they're going to overthrow the government. And we're coming, Iranian people. We love you, you Iranian people. We're going to rescue you from your leader. But Russia sent them the technology to basically shut down Starlink. And then they found out who was downloading Starlink, and they took them out, and they said to the Israelis, we're going to hang them tomorrow if you attack us. And that postponed it. We're in the same type of mode right now. Apparently, significant. The Chinese apparently gave the Iranians the information they needed when the jets left Israel that were going to kill the supreme leader, and they didn't act on it. 2.5 hours of advance notice, and they didn't act on it. But now apparently they found some type of mole in the Iranian government, and they just hanged him. So, you learn a little bit along the way, you correct, and you go on and so forth. They're not going to give in. They're going to tighten the screws. And Trump will double down until he doesn't have any more money or any more missiles. And then what do you do? What do you do? It will be the end of Donald Trump. I'm saying in the fall, the Republicans will be swept out of both the House and the Senate because of this colossal blunder. Even if you're a total American warmonger and imperialist, this was a stupid mistake. He thought that the Iranian people were going to rise up and say, we love you, Americans, welcome them, throwing flowers at them. They were totally delusional. This is the way Paul Wolfowitz felt about Iraq. They will welcome us with open arms. Well, you crushed the Air Force, and then you had an insurgency that drove the Americans out again. Drove the Americans out of Afghanistan. Nobody learns these lessons down there.
But do you think that Trump was pressured into this because of what the Mossad may have on him, or with the pedophilia ring and what went on behind closed doors on Epstein Island?
Everyone was saying that. And I heard that before. It was a blackmail operation. He was heavily involved in associating with Epstein. But I think the big change is his relationship to the deep state. During the first administration, the deep state tried to destroy him. I think now he made a separate peace with the deep state. That's the difference between the first Trump administration and the second administration. And I'm saying the fundamental concern of the deep state is the hegemony of the dollar, the control of the sea lanes, and so on and so forth. And I'm saying that's the driving force, this debt. I think that's the only thing that makes sense here from their perspective. If we can show that we control $42 billion worth of oil, then who cares whether we're $38 trillion, I meant trillion, $38 trillion in debt. I think that's the deep, inescapable grammar of a country that is faced with unrepayable debt. It happened to the English. When they created the Bank of England in 1694, 70 years, it's an exponential curve. It goes along like that at the beginning. Everything's fine. And then whoop, goes up like that. That's somewhere around 70 years. And so what they did, Lord Grey, Adam Smith told Lord Grey, well, make the colonies pay. Well, guess what happened? The colonies rebelled. They rebelled because we're not going to pay off your bad debts. That's your problem. That's not our problem. We are in similar, I'd say the exactly same situation. We've reached the point of no return where we cannot pay off that debt. And if people lose confidence in us, that'll be a catastrophe. So a desperate move will steal the oil, and that will solve our problem. This is an act of desperation. But when you're in the situation, what else are you going to do? When the English have always felt this way. That's why they were pirates. Sir Francis Drake was a terrorist and a pirate, but we speak English, so we thought he was a great hero. But he did one voyage, and when he got back, they had that ship docked in London on the Thames, and you could go and look at it. That gold that he stole from the Spanish Main obliterated the national debt. That shows you how much gold he had stolen. I'm saying the same mindset is at work now, except that it's oil instead of gold, because oil is the basis for our currency and not gold now.
And I often say that when people are desperate, they become irrational. But in their mind, they're rational. But to the sound people that are looking onward, we see the irrational moves. We see the irrational policies. And that's pretty much what you're saying also, that they are desperate, and they're making a lot of mistakes because they are irrational, because they understand that this is the end. And so they're throwing anything they can up against the wall to stick.
That's right. And I'm saying both the Israelis feel this way and the Americans feel this way. The Israelis, because it looks as if it is the end. They can't stop those missiles coming in. Tel Aviv is being destroyed, and the Iranians haven't even started yet. And that was when they had some type of radar. You could watch those. I saw a video. It was 10 Patriot missiles chasing one $25,000 drone. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Not going to work.
So how does Trump think that he'll, and you just said about doubling down, and I say that all the time. How do you think, now he's in this geopolitical casino, and he's doubling down, but he doesn't have any money, but he's willing to bet the house of the papers of the empire on this doubling down, because he says that the war will continue until complete capitulation by Iran. How is that even rational?
Well, let's go back a step here. Let's go back to the beginning of predatory banking in Europe. Okay, the Medici got involved in banking. They made a lot of money manufacturing cloth. They got into banking. Who wants money? The princes want money. Okay, good. We'll lend the prince money. Well, now, Your Excellency, we'd like our money back. Well, the prince says, well, I've got an army and you don't. So you're not going to get your money back. So the House of Medici went bust. They went down the drain. Well, that's why we had a big Navy. That's exactly what the British Empire did with its Navy. It would force payment of debt. Okay? Well, you put all your money in the wrong technology, and now it's not going to work. There's nothing over that. There's nothing like a super army. And I think at this point, this is when he starts thinking about God. Like, God is going to save me. God is going to come down. Jesus Christ is going to return to this earth, and he's going to pat me on the head and say, well done, faithful servant, Donald Trump. I'm saying when you run out of money and you're still in the casino, you start to get delusional. And that's the source of this. I'm saying that this Zionism, this crazy Zionist theology is what feeds your delusions when it seems that everything is hopeless. I mean, we're taught as believers. I'm taught this as a Christian. Pray to God, and he's not going to get you out of a mess that you created for yourself, especially if you think you're the one who's in charge of God. This is the whole point. Logos is God. God is rational. He gave you reason so you could participate in his divine being, and you're thumbing your nose at reason. You're getting involved in irrational adventures, and you want God to pull it out, pull your chestnuts out of the fire. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way.
Well, do you think that they will become so desperate where they will initiate a nuclear war?
That's a good question. Good question. And we're talking about the Israelis. They've always threatened this. So what did they do? The Jews invariably bring about the opposite of what they intend. What did they do now? They murdered the supreme leader. The man who was mainly responsible for holding Iran back from creating nuclear weapons was murdered by the Israelis. Well, now there are people in Iran who were saying, well, I guess we have to get a nuclear weapon. So do they have one? I mean, I'm reading reports that they're claiming that they do have. They don't have to develop. They can buy them. You know, North Korea has nuclear weapons for sale. They could buy them. Now, what are you going to do now if Iran has nuclear weapons? Are you still going to do the same thing? Or let's take the bigger picture. Is Russia going to allow, or Russia and China going to allow you to go nuclear and do on the sanction option and basically have the whole temple crash down on all of us together? Now, they have this mindset because this is what happened in Masada during the first rebellion against Rome. They climbed up to the top of a mountain. It's still there. You can visit it if you go to Israel. And they all committed suicide. So there is a suicidal tendency in the Jewish people. Are they going to be, is there any restraint on what they're doing right now? Are Russia and China going to allow this to happen? If the Israelis knew that if they launched one nuclear missile, 3 nations in the world would obliterate all of Israel, would they go ahead and do it? Would the Israeli people rise up against, we're talking about regime change, would they rise up against Netanyahu? There are a lot of people who don't like him. The people in Israel are under constant attack right now, thanks to Benjamin Netanyahu. How long is he going to stay in power? How long are they going to be able to tough it out? They're doubling down too. How long is that going to last?
You know, I was listening to an interview from a former RGC commander, and they were asking him, I think it was on Journalistically Speaking with Rick Sanchez. I want to give props to whoever that I'm quoting from. Excuse me. And he said that Iran doesn't need nuclear weapons because they have missiles now that have similar destructive power as nuclear weapons. And when I heard that, the first thing I thought about was maybe they have their own version of the Oreshnik missile or something like that. For them to say, he said that we have missiles that does comparable damage as a nuclear weapon. And he said, and Israel knows this. So yeah. What do you have to say about that?
I think the nuclear weapon is obsolete. Why was it so important? Because 80 to 90% of all the bombs that got dropped during World War II missed their target. It leaves the airplane. Well, we have, gravity. You can kind of count, but it's not. The British realized at the beginning of World War II, they did a study, 80 to 90% misses the target. It's not effective against military targets, but it's effective against civilian populations in a densely populated country like Germany. And so they went for the war crime route and decided we're just going to destroy the civilian population, and they will rise up and there will be regime change. That was solved by the atomic bomb because it did so much damage, you didn't even have to get close. You could destroy an entire city with one bomb. And so that's what the United States announced to the world. It really wasn't to force Japan to capitulate. They were like the Iranians. They were ready to sign an agreement, but the United States wanted to show the Soviet Union, we're in boss. We're in charge. And you better do what we say because we have this super weapon. Well, it's as you said, as the man pointed out to you, we now have drones and missiles that are very accurate and they will hit exactly the target. And so you don't need a big bomb like that. So maybe it's all just bluff because we don't need them anymore. We don't know. We're talking about figuring out how suicidal are the Israelis, and that's above my pay grade. I mean, I wouldn't bet a lot of money on their rationality. And when they get desperate, we're seeing this in discourse now. How many times have you heard in recent times some Jew call someone an anti-Semite? It's happening all the time. This is their nuclear weapon, okay? And it's not working. This is exactly what is happening right now. They called Wolfowitz too many times. This is what they're doing, and these are acts of desperation. And so you get people like Mark Levine, who goes hysterical, Rabbi Shmuley. These are people that go hysterical, and they're all over the internet expressing feelings of desperation, anger, because they're losing their power and they don't know how to retain it. The Jew knows what, the Jew will say, well, TikTok is full of anti-Semitism. Well, buy up TikTok and we'll solve that problem. Buy up the internet. No, you don't understand. You put Mark Levine on 24/7 and you will create enormous amounts of anti-Semitism. And they don't know that. They don't understand how bad they look with these acts of desperation. They're losing control of the American mind. That's what's happening right now.
Do you think that if this war continues for a few more weeks or even months, do you think that Israel can continue to exist? Because remember that her economy relies on heavy injections of money from the United States, the EU, and Britain. All three of these are suffering economic collapses as we speak.
Right.
How can Israel be maintained if this war continues?
I don't think they can continue it. I've already told you they are running out of THAAD and Patriot missiles. They will be completely defenseless within a very short period of time. I'm not talking months, I'm talking weeks, maybe a week. And so what happened here is what happens here? You destroyed the moderate powers in Tehran, and now there are people who have less restraint in doing this. Okay, so I think that they're going to have this. What happened in June, the June war? Israel shocked the Iranians. They attacked them while negotiations were. They had the element of surprise. Then Iran came back and they were stunned that these missiles got through. They had a full arsenal of THAAD and Patriot, and they couldn't stop them. So they are the ones that called for a ceasefire. They called for a ceasefire back in June. And Trump arranged a ceasefire and saved the Israelis. The Iranians are not going to go for a ceasefire now. I don't see how Israel is going to survive. Who's going to save them? We don't have, the America doesn't have the missiles. We don't have them. Who else is going to have them? Russia and China are not going to support you. You're on your own, fella. When you're on your own with no one big supporting you, it'd be better if you started talking in a serious way and backing away from a stand that is going to lead to catastrophe. But I don't have a whole lot of hope that the Israelis can do this. Their car has no reverse gear. Have you ever heard a Jew apologize? I have never heard a Jew apologize. It's always, oh, they were anti-Semites, we're victims. They can't get out of that narrative. And how are you going to back out of this now if you don't say, well, I'm sorry. Look, we were taken over by Netanyahu. He's gone. Look, I didn't like the guy. Can we just, we did things we shouldn't have done. Can we have peace now? I don't see any Jew doing that. I mean, who was the guy? What was the guy? Itzhak Rabin. He tried to be reasonable. He was murdered by his own people.
Some people say Benjamin Netanyahu had something to do with that.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that too. So you're going to kill anybody who's willing to talk to the Arabs or the Muslims, and then how are you going to negotiate if you killed everybody who was there to negotiate? They're notorious for killing negotiators. Bad move. Because you think you're powerful and you got the most powerful military in the world backing you up. Well, they don't have any more missiles for you. What do you do now?
Desperation. Again,
desperation.
And you said, going back to something you said earlier about the carpet bombing of civilian areas during World War II by the British and the U.S. Look at what's going on with Israel, carpet bombing, Lebanese and Palestinian. Look what they're doing in Iran, because they can't bring Iran to its knees or cannot break the back of the IRGC and the armed forces. So now they're just trying to level Tehran, but Iran still has functioning air defense systems that are taking out. Someone says drones and planes, but it's just. Do you think? What I'm trying to say is, do you think that it would show itself to be more sturdy as these weapons start to decrease? Because America has so many. I think what was it, 1,600 missiles to shoot. How many does she have left to shoot? Because that is overwhelming. That's a lot of missiles shooting, and for air defense systems to take down. So as the air defense systems pull back a little bit, this is what I'm trying to say. As the air defense systems pull back a little bit, and America's stockpiles dry, do you think that Iran will have a better showing of itself militarily against both the United States and Israel, because they won't have to deal with with all of those missiles coming from all directions?
Yes. I think that Iran has held back. They knew they were in for the long haul. Their strategy was to overwhelm expensive missiles with cheap drones. And I don't see any reason why that strategy has failed. I think it's succeeding. And so what is the fallback strategy for the United States and Israel? I don't think they have one. Is there a plan B here? Is there an off-ramp? I mean, usually what I think before it was, it's like shock and awe, and eventually they capitulate. They can't take it anymore, and they capitulate. That's what happened in Serbia after 80 days. They capitulated it. And I don't think it's going to happen this time, because they are not capable of maintaining this intensity of attack for that long a period of time, especially since the response is destroying their military infrastructure. Those radar operations, those radar stations in the Gulf. Well, how are you going to target incoming missiles now when you don't have any radar? What is the plan here? The plan was a quick victory. Shock and awe. The Iranian people will rise up and it'll be done in 2 days and Trump will be the great hero. Well, suppose that doesn't happen. What are you going to do now? What are you going to do? I don't think they have an answer to that question.
I think that what Iran is doing is strategic. They're knocking out these bases, the infrastructure, to push America completely out of the region, because
right. Absolutely.
To reconstitute those bases will be a threat to Iran and the region, but it will cost so much more than it cost at the beginning to build those bases because of inflation. And the nations now see that the United States air defense systems can't protect them. So I think after this war, America will be pushed out of the Middle East or West Asia. And once they are pushed out, how can Israel maintain its military edge?
It cannot. It never could maintain its do it all. I love when Ben Shapiro says, we don't need America. We'll do it all. Oh, sure, Ben. This is ridiculous. They could never do it on their own. And Trump, even at that last moment, had a moment of opportunity if what he said is true. In other words, if Israel said to Trump, if you don't help us, we will go it alone. That was a golden opportunity for Trump. He said, go for it, fellas. All yours. And he could have killed two birds with one stone. Let Iran and Israel fight it out, and then we'll just stand out of it and don't blame us. And at that point, probably Iran would not have attacked American bases. That was totally stupid. How many great opportunities has this man had and simply blew them because he can't see beyond his own ego. His ego is this like bubble that surrounds this guy. And he can't see outside of it because he doesn't want to. My mind. I follow my mind. I don't need to know that. I'll follow my mind. Another catastrophe in the waiting. I'm a literature guy. Okay, I have a PhD in literature. This is Captain Ahab, the captain of the Pequod in Moby Dick. This is Trump. He's the captain of the ship of state, and he's sailing us into this white whale that's going to sink the ship because all he needs to know is his own mind. My mind. The mind is its own place. Nothing matters but the integrity of your own mind. This is what Americans believe, and this is going to lead to catastrophe. Catastrophe.
But don't you think that the deep state knew all of this about his ego? Because they have all of these profilers.
Sure.
They profiled him about his ego, and they had to know about the Epstein files because you don't get close to that office without them having something on you. So all of this MAGA and all of this other stuff, this was just false bravado for the deep state so that they can push their war agenda. Do you believe?
Well, I think he made a separate peace with the deep state. That's the difference between the first Trump administration and the second Trump administration. That he lied to the voters, said he was going to end the war, but he's there, did nothing to end these wars. The deep state thrives. It thrives on war. You've got the military-industrial complex. Okay, they thrive when there's war because there are things that keep blowing up. You have the bankers, because you have to borrow money to do a war. All of these powerful forces love war, and it's the point of the job of the president to understand when to push back against these forces, and he didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to do it. And so because they probably have the profile. So what if you flatter Trump? You can get him to do what you want. Netanyahu flatters him all the time. He's forever giving him awards. Here's an Israel award. No goy has ever won this award. Here, Donald Trump, he's the greatest. They're flattering him. They're manipulating him. That's his Achilles heel. It's his egomania. It's his narcissism is his Achilles heel, and he's easy to manipulate.
Are we watching the end, not just the end of Israel, but are we watching the fall and the end of the American empire?
Yes. It's very simple. If the straits are open, We still have an American empire. If the straits are closed, that's the end of the American empire. You can check it out. That's what's going to be the sign, And I'm saying they're not going to be able to open those straits. It's not going to happen.
So I was just looking yesterday. I was just trying to keep my eyes on the gas. And the gas was a day or two ago, it was like $2.54 in Florida. I go back later on, and I told the story on the show yesterday. It's over $3.17
Right.
now. So and
same thing in Indiana. It's up to $3.20 now in Indiana. It was $2.50, now it's up to $3.20.
And also along the Mississippi Gulf Coast area, I got an alert that they said in less than 24 hours on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, gas jumped 65 cents. We're looking at gas, the incremental increase of gas. But what does that say about the prices of food and essential items that we need if the Strait of Hormuz continue to stay closed?
It means that everything will become more expensive because everything has to be moved. We have created an economy, a world economy is based on cheap energy. So we can manufacture things in China and they have cheap labor, use the cheap labor because it's cheap energy to bring it over here. Well, that's going to change the whole inner working of the world economy by suddenly not having cheap energy anymore. There are also other scenarios of like the derivative market. Are there people trying to short the price of oil, their futures on oil? And if it does go to a certain type, is that going to set off a cascade of derivatives that Wall Street cannot pay? It's like insurance. Are you going to bankrupt the insurance company because so many people are making claims on them? They're apparently, it's kind of arcane, but they're apparently a quadrillion dollars of derivatives.
5 quadrillion.
5 quadrillion. Now we're talking real money. 5 quadrillion. What happens if suddenly that starts to cascade? Nobody can pay that. Now we're beyond trillion now, and we're beyond oil. There's not enough oil in the universe to pay off $5 quadrillion in derivatives. So what's going to happen? That will collapse. It will default, and the whole thing will come crashing down. And now what we saw over this period, beginning in 1973, the massive transfer of money from the pockets of the working class into the bank accounts of the 1% of the 1%. And that enabled IPAC. And IPAC had money to burn. They bribed every single member of Congress except for Thomas Massey. And they had total control, and everything's wonderful, except that the whole thing is going to collapse right now. All at once, nothing first, just as bubbles do when they burst.
And we go back to Trump in closing. Now, he started this war, not really thinking through the ramifications of it. And if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed, then we see higher prices and everything. That means that gas prices are higher, which means that companies that are operating on small margins will go bankrupt, which means that we'll have a flood of bankruptcies. On top of that, we'll have a lot of unemployed people, and we'll have some product that can't make it to the stores, which means the stores will be empty, which means the stores will go bankrupt, which means there are massive defaults on bank loans. Has this guy even thought about that? This is the end of the American empire through a stupid policy like that?
No, I don't think he has. I think the canary in the coal mine will be Germany. So we defeated Germany. They internalized the commands of their oppressors. The Germans are more American than the Americans are. And then we blew up their pipeline. Germany has to have cheap energy in order to be competitive, because if they don't have cheap energy, no one will buy their Mercedes. It's high technology stuff that they have. So we said, don't worry. You can buy liquid natural gas. Well, they come in ships, and it costs 6 times what the energy from Russia cost. And now you can't even get it. So now what? And I'm saying there will be an uprising in Germany. They will leave NATO. They will leave the European Union, and they will make peace with Russia, because that's the only option they have left. And that will be the end of the American hegemony over Europe.
So, last question. Are we living in the change of worlds from the west to the east?
What I think will happen with the fall of the American empire, you will see the rise of the Eurasian landmass as the most prosperous region in the world. And they will have completed the railroad between Shanghai and Rotterdam, so that renders the United States Navy obsolete. They can't block trade anymore. And that's I think what we will see in the future.
Thank you so much, Professor. I really appreciate it. I want to have you back on soon. Be safe, be blessed, and I'll send you the video.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody,
Salam.
walaikum salam. Thank you so much. Everybody, listen. Again, before we close out, I always have to say this ad nauseum. Do right by others, not because there's some material gain to be had or some accolades to gain. Do right by others because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, remember that God Almighty is watching you. As my late, great, and beautiful mother would always say, God sits high on the throne of power, but he looks low at the actions of man. Know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, remember to stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Deuces, and hit the like button. We're out of here.